In this demonstration, we're going to cover how to implement conditional access policies. Hello, I am Cio Rodriguez. Let's go back into the, the home of the Microsoft Entra Admin Center from entra.microsoft.com. You get to conditional access by clicking on conditional access right here. Conditional access is a security approach that controls access to applications and data based on real time conditions, not just user identity. It evaluates signals such as user identity, device health, location, and risk level before granting access. Policies follow an if then model, allowing blocking or requiring additional verification like multi factor authentication. This dynamic, context aware approach helps organizations protect sensitive resources while enabling users to work securely from anywhere. By applying the right controls only when needed, conditional access supports zero trust principles and balances a strong security with a seamless user experience. Here we are at the overview page where, first of all, we can create a new policy from scratch, or we can use policy templates, which we will cover in a second. Um, Policy templates are highly recommended. They are a lot easier to implement, and there are templates for the most common scenarios. In the overview, you see the policy summary. The conditional access for agents, it's a new feature and it's now available. So we see agent identity. So we can basically treat and apply conditional access policies to agents just like we do to humans. So this is great because many agents, especially the the autonomous agents, and even if they're not completely autonomous, a lot of agents have their own identity, and therefore we could apply conditional access based on those identities. Here we see a policy snapshot where we see four policies are enabled. One is in report only mode and one is off. Okay. So the only one that are taking effect are this one that are enabled. The other ones are one is only reporting and the other one is off. Here we see the number of users that are signing in during the last 7 days without any policy coverage. So these are maybe could be an excluded user, but those are things that are worth reviewing. In terms of devices, we see that 21% of sign ins in the last 7 days were from unmanaged or non compliant devices. So you probably want to take a look at that. Applications, you can browse the list of applications that are not protected by your policies. And there's new stuff over here that you need to also uh, go for, like in the what's new. Name locations are Microsoft Entra ID, um, supports for, let's say you want to apply to a specific IP addresses or exclude IP addresses, or let's say that you want to create a name location for countries. You can say, I want to prohibit sign in from this country. That's kind of stuff. So name location is to scope to where you want to apply those conditional access. So instead of just applying based on users and applications, you could also scope based on subnets and networks and regions and that sort of stuff. Anyway, so kind of an overview of the kind of things that you can do here in the overview, right? Now, if we go to policies, we'll see more detailed information about the policies. And policies are either created by Microsoft, especially when you use those templates. That's that's going to say created by Microsoft. Or if you create it manually, then they are created through manual process. We're going to go through the process of creating both a Microsoft managed policy and a user managed policy, just to go through the flow and to get experience on how to do that. Right. But my recommendation is that um, most company or that most company use this create a new policy from templates. These are, again, policies that have been created for Microsoft for the most common scenarios. And so it's easy to do this way. So you get secure foundation. So, you know, basically most companies should have this. Like, for example, blocking legacy authentication, right? Um, block legacy authentication endpoints that can be used to bypass multi-factor. Basically means applications that can bypass multi-factor authentication. These templates are divided into zero trust, remote work, protect administrator, emerging threats like the required phishing resistant multi-factor authentication for admins. A lot of companies are starting to implement that. And then we have the AI agents, block high risk agents from accessing resources. That's a good one. And then you get the all over there. So um, I would say that this two, the emerging threats, and if you're using agents, of course, this is a policy that you want to use. And to create that policy, you just basically select it. You could create right with one click, but let's go through the process to see what you get. Um, so here is the name of the policy, which you could change if you wanted to. So I'm going to put CO in front of it just to um, be able to, you know, uh, visibly see that this was something that I created. You can, it is recommended that you start with policies in report mode only so that you track and check and make sure you don't block people because policies are extremely powerful. You could easily disrupt an entire organization if you are not careful and if you do the wrong thing. We put it that way. So that's what we're going to do. That's the template. Assignments. The this include the scope basically means all agent identities. So any agent in the company, right? This will apply to. Any will apply to any applications, any agents, actions, any applications. If the risk level is high, then block access. This is what that's saying. And you may ask, okay, but what does it mean when risk level is high? Well, risk level is high when an agent or an identity is doing a stuff, it's accessing data or applications that they're not supposed to. Maybe accessing sensitive data or trying to exfiltrate data, whatever the case may be. That's an example. It could be if someone is hacked and the identity is hacked, and then the agent is accessing from a country that it's different from the country that the user normally logs in, that's considered high. Let's say that you have a user or an agent that does stuff, you know, from 8 to 5 regularly, and all of a sudden that identity, whether it is an agent or a user, signs in at 11 p.m. at night. Well, that agent or that identity never sign in after 6 or 7 p.m., let's say, but all of a sudden it's accessing stuff at night. Or it's trying to download files, a huge number of files, when that agent never downloads files. There's so many things that could be high risk. But the main thing is when an identity, whether it is a user or an agent, does something out of the norm. So this is kind of like anomaly detection, if you want it. So anyway, so here we go, and that's what it will do. Now, because this is in report only mode, it, it won't create anything. It won't create any issue because it's only going to be reporting. Okay. And so here is that policy that just created. Once this policy is in place and everything was good and you like it, then you can just go ahead and turn it on. And then the policy will be on. If this is something that you don't need and you don't want to use it, then you can delete the policy. And if you want to see again policy information, then you could also click on that. Okay, so that's basically. Now let's go back into the policies again by clicking on this. And here we are back into the policies. The so notice that, let me just refresh this. Actually, let me take this back. I previously said that if a policy was created with a template, that would have been labeled as managed policy, but that's not true. A managed policies, it's something that is created, you know, uh, again, uh, that is managed completely from Microsoft. But this, even though this is a template, but it was created by me, so this is a user policy. Just wanted to clarify that over there. If you want more information about policies and how they work, what they are, you can click on this link, and this is a wonderful reading if you want to learn more about this. And for those who are preparing for the SC-500 certification exam, this is a great reading to go in and enforce the knowledge of conditional access policies. Okay, so there we go. Now let's say that um, we want to create a policy from scratch. Then you would click on this, and you would give it a name. The assignment, again, um, you could choose either agents or users. So here you can now, and again, agents is new, it's still in preview. So this is not available yet to the public, still in preview. But this is something that was added because it used to be only users and groups. So let's say that this is for users and groups. Um, you want to apply to either the everyone's in the company, or do you want to apply to a specific group of users, right? And when you are starting, it's good to have a security group, and I would say just if you want to test something, start with a smaller group of users. So you can create a security group, or you can select, groups individually in either case. But you have to be very, very careful when you do this because, again, these are the included users. Now, what you may want to do is that if you are applying to everyone, you always exclude at least the break glass account. A break glass account is a global administrator that is never used. It's only there for emergency purposes. And you should always have a one of these accounts because if something happens, that's the account that will get you out of trouble. You could easily, or it is possible to lock yourself out, even if you are a global administrator with a conditional access policies. This is how powerful they are. You could basically block the entire organization, and that would be a huge problem. So again, make sure now because I am just including a test user, which is something that I don't it's not my account, it doesn't really matter, right? So that's the users in group. Um, what do we want to target? We can target either none applications or we can try target all applications. Um, so we can, this is resources. We could also target user actions. And again, um, then these things will change over here. We're gonna go with resources. Normally, the applications is the most common piece, and we could also um, target authentication context. We'll talk about that later, but we're gonna concentrate on these apps. And this used to be called all cloud apps, or you could select resources, and then the resources select resources based on attributes, or you could select based on specific resources. And then when you come here, there are a lot of resources that you can choose from, whether it is right now, there are 105 resources found. You can categorize by enterprise applications, agent blueprint principles. Again, this is new because of the agents or agents identity, but we chose basically the users and groups. So those are the kind of things. So if I just wanted to target, let's say, um, the Microsoft admin portal, I could do that. So again, you could test individual applications. So that's something that I could do. In the network piece, network and locations determined by IP address. So this is that name locations that I was talking about. So you could, do that up there. So if you would have to, configure this before this would work, right? But so actually, I don't want to get out of there. In the conditions piece here, you could apply conditions or not, especially if you are targeting user risk or sign-in risk or insider risk. That's another piece that works in conjunction with purview. There's a number of things, device by platforms, locations, client apps. I mean, the conditions is a huge topic that we're not going to go into details now on those. Um, we might come back later on when we create more policies. The access control is either, first of all, either block. So you can create two type of policies. You can create a policy to block everything, right? Actually, this is a good thing for agents. So companies are worried that people are creating agents all over, and sometimes many companies do not have visibility into that unless you have a solution like Agent 365 from Microsoft. I'm not saying that that's the only one, but it's one of the best solutions out there to uh, manage and control agents. But let's say that you're not using anything to control agents. What you could do is create a conditional access policy. You block every single agent, okay? And then you can come in and create a policy to exclude agents. And then you basically, or in other words, you can create a conditional access policy. Actually, you don't even have to do that. You could say, allow the agents, and then just have a white list of the agents that you want to allow. So there's several ways you can do this. You could block all and then make exceptions, or you can say allow and then create a list of the ones that you want to allow. I mean, there's several ways of doing this, but that's the whole idea. So you can say, okay, grant access, but require multi-factor authentication, or require authentication strength, which we will talk about that later on, or require devices to be marked as compliant. There's a number of things. You can check either one or more. Now, remember, the more that you choose, the more tight security is going to be, but at the same time, you could break things easier. I mean, it's really easy to kind of block people if you don't do this properly. That's why it's better to try first. But anyway, so if you want to, to do that, then that's one of the things. And this is a common one where you say, okay, um, you know, grant access, but require multi-factor authentication, for example. You know, um, a lot of companies are using this. Right? And the sessions, it's another piece that we're not going to be covering this now, but basically session control access based on session control to enable limited experiences within a specific cloud applications. And again, if you want more information, so you can go into that. But this is, has to do with um, conditional access app control and signing frequency. Again, we may come back to some of these features because this is a huge topic, and there's so many things, and we can look at this from many different angles. So um, conditional access policies integrate with Microsoft Entra, but also with Microsoft Defender, Microsoft Purview. So we can look at this from different lenses, different perspective. But in a nutshell, that's what. And then you go and just create the policy. Now remember, again, the policy is in report mode, so I'm not concerned about this. And also, it was applied to a specific user, so only that user would be affected if something were to happen. All right. I don't think that. Okay, there you go. This is the one that I just created. So that's kind of an overview, right? Overview about conditionality policies. There's a lot of stuff that you could over here. One area that it's also important is, oh, I don't have. Okay, interesting. I don't have access to this. I'm not sure quite what that is because I'm the global admin. But um, if you want to see insights into reporting, so you want to see how those policies are reporting, you can come here and take a look at that. So we're not going to troubleshoot that at this moment. But there you have it. This is an overview about conditional access policies, what they are, how they work, and why they're so important in today's world. And we also cover the fact that you could um, control access to agents, based on conditional access as well. So thank you for watching. If you find this content useful, like my content, subscribe to my page, and let's continue on this journey for the SC-500 certification exam. Thank you. Hope to see you next.